The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Joseph Campbell.
There was a time in the beginning of my pole journey that I pretty much quit. It was so hard. It was so freaking hard. The instructor, I took a class, instructor came in. I was by far the least experienced girl in the class, and she was just making us do like the hardest, like most acrobatic things. And I was so wiped out. I was so tired. I was so beat up, and like I was so discouraged. I was like this is not for me. I'm spending so much money. This was so expensive, and like I'm not cut out for this.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Artists Like Us, where we explore the creative journeys of those that you might pass by every day. Your neighbor, your coworker, your best friend. We're here to shine a light on the artists among us and the ones balancing their passions with the sometimes pleasant and often harsh realities of life. I'm your host, Janita Richards, and together we'll dive into the stories, struggles, and successes of the creative souls who may not be household names, but who make our worlds more vibrant. Let's discover the artistry that surrounds us with the artists like us. And today, the artist like us that I have is Coleen. Coleen is an extremely talented pole dancer who moonlights in the daytime as a chief of staff at a financial company. And I'm so happy to have you with us, Coleen.
Wow, thank you so much for having me, Gina. What a beautiful introduction.
Yeah, so I was explaining this to you before, how we're like in the same, we have like the same friendship community, I feel like the same extended friendship community. So while you and I are not like direct friends who talk all the time, I see you and I think, oh yeah, Coleen, of course.
I'm so honored. That means so much to me.
And I think that's a fun way to look at your friends and friends of friends, is that you're not always going to have the time to build up those one-on-one connections, but they're somehow there because people that you trust greatly trust them, or people that they trust other people you trust. And I think it's just a beautiful community that gets built.
I know. I feel like we have such a beautiful network, and we have so many different friends in our friend groups with such vast interests. So it's just really cool to be able to like connect with them and see the world through their lens. Like I remember I had gone to one of your readings like at the Nook where you were also kind of performing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that Janita was like also a writer as well as an actress.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to that. That was really fun to have everyone there. And what was great about that too is that so you showed up, and so many other people that had, I guess I'm not super close with, also showed up, and you just think, wow, that's cool. When I put myself out there, the people who I would also support are supporting me, and you just see all this like love and light. And I think it's just so fun and encouraging. And I hope that everybody who feels the need to put themselves out there can also get that in return.
Yes, I would say like I really do think the huge reason why I've been able to just like pursue creativity and pursue art is the life and the people that are here in New York City that inspire me every day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it includes people like you. I just think what you're doing is like so incredibly wonderful. And when you sent me over the details for the Artists Like Us podcast, I was like, wow, I resonate with this so deeply. So that's why it meant so much to me that you, saw some sort of connection with me and like reached out.
Totally. That makes me really happy to hear that. So let's dive into what it is that you're all about right now. Pole dancing and just dancing in general. So you've been pole dancing since 2018, but you have dance background before that, right?
Yes, that's right. So I started dancing technically when I was 3 years old. I think my mom, she put me in tap dancing classes. Um, she was like, Colleen, you get a choice. You get to do ballet or you get to do tap. What would you like to do? And I was like, tap. I like tap because it's more fun and it's like super energetic. Ballet, it's just a little bit too girly. It's too demure. It's a little bit stuck up. So like I want to have some fun and do tap dancing. So I did some tap dancing throughout elementary school, and dance has always been a way for me to have fun and connect with my body and make friends. So throughout like high school, I also did like some after school activities. I joined like my high school breakdance club. I took classes like in musical theater and jazz, and also just like I took drama classes as well. So it's always been a way for me to connect with myself and like my community.
Wait, I love that you didn't want to do ballet because it was too girly, which I feel like is so many young girls is the opposite of that. I also took ballet as a kid, and I loved the girly aspect of it, especially because I was very much a tomboy as a kid. It felt ballet felt like this secret place where I could be really girly and wear a tutu and not tell the neighborhood kids somehow. But so tap dancing, and is that something that you continued basically all through middle school, high school?
Let's see, I continued, I think, through like maybe like the third or the fourth grade, and then I switched schools, so they didn't have like an after school dance program. So I think the school I switched to, the middle school program, it was, I guess, like more sports focused. We didn't have dance. And so I was like, okay, well, that's the other sort of after school physical activity. And that's when I learned I'm not very coordinated and I'm not very athletic. So I had a lot of fun, that was for sure. But I definitely realized I was like, this is definitely so much more of a challenge. And then when I went to high school, we didn't have a dance program, but we had a theater program. And so I was really drawn to that. And that was something that like immediately clicked with me. So I kept dancing through that. And then also I made friends with the local like kids doing hip hop, which is like a lot of like the Asian kids on the West Coast. So I was sort of like adopted by them. And we would just spend like lunches and like after school, like dancing and playing around, and we perform at school rallies.
I didn't realize that you were from the West Coast. So breakdancing and hip hop, do you find that you also develop this love for hip hop music? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, definitely. It really, I think what tap dancing and then also like hip hop both have in common is I feel like they were like very masculine, type of like energy, and same with like the
Hmm.
music, right? And so I, I felt like I could like really embody that. So I absolutely just kind of like love, and hip hop's like a such, like, it's like a culture, right? So it's not just like a dance, but it's like a whole culture too. So it's just really lovely, like kind of getting into that. And then also like coming to New York and seeing what the hip hop culture is like over here.
What I think is really interesting too about you talking about tap and breakdancing and hip hop and the masculinity of it all, like the aggressiveness. I remember when I did musical theater and just showcases and stuff. And whenever someone would do a tap song, it would always be like this very, very energetic, hitting the floor kind of thing. And oftentimes the girls who were doing it would wear bigger clothes, or sometimes there were suits involved. And I think that's such a almost a very stark contrast to what you're doing now, which is pole dancing, which we think of as being something that is super, super feminine. And also, when I talk to you and when I interact with you, you're super soft spoken and you come across very girly. And I find that I'm thinking about you exploring these things that are a bit more masculine and maybe aggressive is not the right word, high energy. Do you find that that's just like a another way to express this part of yourself that doesn't necessarily always have a place to come out in your regular day to day?
Oh my gosh, all the time. I think about that too. Like there's such different styles of movement and I resonate with them both. I remember I took a dance workshop just a few weeks ago. It was actually not a workshop, it was part of a dance intensive. It was a performing intensive in Asheville. And in the class, the instructor gave me a prompt, which was dance sexy. And I was like,
Dance
okay,
sexy.
dance sexy, whatever that means to you, dance sexy. So I didn't really think about it much, but when I was dancing sexy, I felt like I was dancing very masculine, very aggressive, kind of like that hard hitting place. It's like because hip hop and like tap were the first like dance forms that I picked up, I feel like it's like having like a mother tongue, right? But except it's with dance. So I feel
Interesting.
like that's just like a safe place for me to come back to. And exploring more feminine movement now is definitely a super new journey for me. And I love both. And I think it's like the yin and the yang, right? There is the masculine and the feminine and the masculine, and they kind of like all, come together in one big harmonious like cycle.
Yeah, and what you the prompt dance sexy to inspire you to kind of go back to what you had started with, your roots of things like hip hop and being a bit more masculine. I think that's an interesting connection in saying that being sexy is kind of just being super comfortable in what you're doing, and that makes you feel confident, and therefore that makes you feel sexy because you could probably be doing the most stereotypical sexy thing, like, I don't know, putting a finger in your mouth and batting your eyelashes. But if you don't feel comfortable and confident doing that, it's not going to be sexy.
That's so true. I did not think about it like that. That's so profound.
So I want to talk more about why you went into pole then. If you did kind of come from these more masculine spaces of dance, what kind of made you think, oh, okay, I want to actually do the complete opposite of that now?
That's a really great question. I would say I love all forms of dance. I will take a dance class pretty much in any style of dance at any point in time because I feel like it's learning a new language and you're just tapping into a different mindset, but
Mm.
with your body. And you also get to meet so many different people and like a different community. So for me, that was just one of the things I did with pole dancing. When I moved out to Brooklyn, I had a roommate who got into pole dancing, and she ended up being a work study at a pole and aerial studio called Body and Pole in Manhattan. And we installed a pole in our apartment, and she had so much fun with it, but it really intimidated me. And I was like, oh, I could never do that. But I think one day, I was visiting my parents back in the Bay Area in California, and I didn't really have anything to do. I was kind of bored. And so on a whim, I was like, oh, like, what if I just try pole dancing? So I go on Google, I just like search up pole dancing class, and I see a studio pulled up. They have like good reviews. And so I just decided to drop into like one of their beginner classes. And it was not at all the sort of experience that I was expecting. I was expecting to come into a place where there's these like super like hot women in like skimpy clothing and like high heels and like whipping around the pole being like super sensual, but like that was not what I experienced at all. I drove up to a strip mall and the building had tinted windows and there was no signage on the outside. So I was like, I don't even know if this is the right place, but the address matched up. I came up, I like opened the door, and behind the door there was like a set of heavy black curtains from the ceiling down to the ground. So I was like, I don't know where I am right now. This is pretty
Sounded kind of
strange.
scary.
I know, it sounds kind of scary. I'm like, what's going on here? So I pull myself through the curtains and it's just this giant open space with like pretty bright lights and giant poles, like from floor to ceiling. It's got to be at least like definitely more than like 10 feet tall, maybe like 12 to 15 feet tall. And then I'm greeted by a like a young Asian man wearing like a small little speedo. He's like super sweaty. He's like, "Are you here for the next class?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I am." He's like, "Okay, you can just like you just hang out over here. We're almost done." And I'm like, "Okay, that was so nice for someone to approach me like that. They didn't have a front desk." And then I'm looking at the class, and it's just like a bunch of adults in all shapes and sizes wearing all different sorts of colorful things. They're all just kind of like super sweaty and like going up and down the pole doing these amazing like acrobatic tricks. And I was like, okay, this is super cool and definitely not what I was expecting at all.
That just totally flips your expectations on your head. And applause and just being brave though, because it sounded, I mean, you're saying that the pole that you had in your own home, which is the place where you are arguably the most comfortable, you had this big intimidating thing of, oh, I don't think I want to do that, even though my roommate does it. And so you're back into another home though, because you're on the West Coast and you're thinking, okay, this is what I want to try. The thing that scares me in my new home, I'm going to try at this safe space in my old home. I think that's very interesting. Just like you battling, I guess, the safety and bravery, and not many people can be brave and try new things like that. So applause to you from 2018.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm also proud of like my like 23-year-old self for putting myself in there. But I think things that scare me also excite me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a bit a part of it. I was like, oh, it is really scary, but that's like what makes it exciting. So let's just see what happens. And I had such an amazing time during the class. What really stood out to me was one, people were they were like pretty nerdy. I would say the people who were taking the class, they were kind of like nerdy. Everyone was so friendly and super supportive because, when you are the new person coming into something and everybody already knows each other, it can be very intimidating and you're just worried like, oh, I'm new. Am I going to do something wrong? Like, am I going to fit in? But everyone was just like
Mm-hmm.
so supportive. And the instructor was super funny. And then towards the end of class, the instructor taught us how to climb up the poles. And me, not being very athletic because I did not make the sports team past um, seventh grade where everybody got on the sports team and was not very athletic as a person. PE was probably my worst subject, right? I was able to climb to the top of the pole. I was like at the ceiling. It was
Were
the
you able
first
to
time
get
I,
down?
yeah, I was able to get down. At first, I was like, oh my gosh, now how do I get down? Because like I was like so excited to be up there. But I was like, oh my God, like that was the most amazing athletic feat I had done. I don't know, maybe ever. And I was just like so proud of myself. I was like, I can't believe I did it. And as I was climbing up there, and as I got up there, the entire class in my memory turned and looked at me and they were like cheering me on. They were like clapping, they were like screaming for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a star. This is like so incredible. It was such a wonderful experience. And I think that just is a great example of what the culture in pole dancing is like. We are super duper big on community and love just like cheering each other on. That's always like a big part of class. I don't think there's ever a single class that I go to where like people are not just like cheering each other on.
I'm picturing right now you climbing up the pole and everyone cheering as you're at the top. That scene from Mulan where she gets the two medallions and wraps them around in the middle of the night, and everyone wakes up in the morning and she shoots the arrow down because she's at the top. That's what I'm seeing now. But it sounds. I think pole dancing classes are probably a lot more supportive than the general was in that film.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because as I was telling the story of me climbing up this pole, I had an image of Mulan climbing like the bamboo, like when she's going through the training.
Yes. Maybe
Oh my
that's the
gosh, that's
spirit that
hilarious.
you invoked while that happened. Like you just blacked out and you were, I am Mulan.
I
I
was like,
can do this. I can get to the top.
yes. That's exactly how I felt. I was like going through the training period and it's just like everything just clicked and I had a breakthrough moment. And so yeah, that was definitely one of just the most like special moments in my life because that was a moment. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe maybe I am athletic like after all. Like maybe I can do this.
Oh,
Um and it's okay because even if I'm not doing everything correctly the first time around, I'm still having so much fun. And everyone here is super awesome. So I just want to come back and take more classes. So that's kind of how I got like, you know, sucked in the pole vortex.
so you take one pole class, one becomes two, two becomes three, three becomes nine. When did you know, oh, this is something that I really want to keep doing? Because I've taken a pole class before and I thought it was really fun. I've only taken one pole class. So that's me stopping, but you're taking this one pole class and I'm saying, I'm going to do three. I'm going to do six. I'm going to do nine. I'm going to do this all the time now.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you took a pole class before. That's so cool.
Forever ago,
Where
I
was
just wanted to
it?
try different things. It was somewhere in Manhattan. I cannot remember the studio, but it was really fun. I felt like this is cool. I could do this again, but I just didn't really. There was nothing. There was no reason why I didn't, but there was not enough of a reason, I guess, for me to keep doing it. I guess I also do a lot of things. So, and I know we'll get into how pole kind of takes over your life. But I guess, when did you know that, oh, I'm okay with this taking over my life?
Got it. Wow, I love that how you also like try to pole dancing class very similar to me because you're just like, oh, I also want to just try something new. And that's how a lot of us typically, you know, get into pole. I think what happened was when I came back to New York, um, I started taking pole classes at Foxy Fitness in Manhattan. And what's different about Foxy versus other studios is that they have mixed level classes. So people of different levels will come into a class, and then the instructor will really tailor the experience to what each individual person is working on. Versus most other studios, everybody is at a similar level, and we're all working on the same things. And I remember I was like still really new to pole at this point. And I come into this class and I'm like the newest girl in the room doing the least impressive things. And these two girls come in, they're friends, and they're like the most I guess like seasoned dancers like in the room. And I remember the instructor coming over and helping them out with like this new trick, this new acrobatic trick on the pole. And she's breaking down the new move to this girl. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this sounds like a different language, what's happening right now. They're like first you get into the thing, and then the next thing, and then the blah blah blah. It's like whenever you ever talked about taking the subway system to someone who's like a non-New Yorker,
Wow. So it
like,
sounds
I took the
like,
J train to the blah 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 stop, and
yeah,
they're just like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
of
It sounds like they're speaking in code language, and they've
course.
never met each other before, and immediately they just know exactly what's going on. She's like, okay, I'm gonna do the this to this to this, and so this girl, she goes up the pole, and this is she flips herself, and she just looks like a normal person. She doesn't look like an Olympic gymnast or like anything like that. She comes up to the pole, immediately like flips upside down. The coach kind of like says a few code words, and then before I know it, like her foot is above the head and her hand is there, and like she's like holding on to the pole like with her ankles and her hands. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on? This is the wildest thing I have ever seen in my life. And I think this girl we call in it's called a butterfly. And I was just so shook because I had never seen something like this happen like 2 feet away from me. I was like,
The move is called a
wow,
butterfly, or
a
she is
butterfly.
called,
It's called a
okay.
butterfly. Yeah, so the move is called a butterfly. It's pretty funny because it's considered like an intermediate move. It's considered a foundational move, and it's something I teach now. But the first time I saw it, I was like, this is like magic. Oh my gosh. So I approached this girl after class and I asked her, I'm just like, wow, what you did was just like so incredible. I was so amazed. Like, how long, how many classes, how many pole classes have you been taking? And at this point, I think I've taken like 7. I was like, I'm on my like 7th class. And she's like, girl, I don't know. I lost count. Like, it's got to be like in the hundreds or something now. And I was like, okay, so it's got to be like in the hundreds to get to this level. And so I remember, I kept a whiteboard in my room. In my room, I had like a countdown of like how many out of 100 poems I'm gonna take
Colleen, that's
because
so
I wanted
cute.
to do what she did because that shit was so sick. So anyway, that's kind of how it started. So I guess I have a slightly um obsessive personality, some
Mhm.
might say. And so I was just like locked in. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I might have a shot at actually being good at this. Like, let me just like do it because it's super cool and it's really fun.
At that 7th class, had you seen improvements from your first one that kind of kept you going, that made you think, oh, I actually could? Because it could have been someone could have seen that person and said, oh, they've taken 100 classes and they can do that. But they're like, but in themselves, they're thinking, oh, I would take 100 classes and still never get near that because maybe they don't feel that they progressed from class 1 to class 7.
That's a really great question. It was funny. So after I just totally gushed to this like student, she was like, "Oh, that like I'm not good. Like that wasn't impressive at all." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen." So I thought it was just really interesting because like she had brushed it off as something very commonplace, something kind of like normal. And I think part of that kind of encouraged me. I was like, "Oh, so to you this is normal. Like maybe what if that was normal to me one day?" I would say from classes 1 to 7, there was not a lot of improvement. Everything was very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
I would compare how I felt the knowledge on the pole. It's like, do you ever play like Mortal Kombat or something? Like one of those games where you're like,
Yeah,
I don't
for
know what
sure.
the hell is going on, but if I just smash a buttons, like maybe I'll like
Mm-hmm.
do the thing that I'm supposed to do. It felt like that when I was on the pole. I was like, I don't know where the hand is supposed to go. It's supposed to go a little higher, lower, like where's my leg? Where's anything? Super confused. But I think it was just because the energy in the room was just like really infectious with the class and I was having so much fun. And I guess I was just like pretty determined as well because I was like, I see enough improvements that um maybe one day I'll get better. But it seemed so far away.
The analogies or comparisons that you've used so far, you've called learning pole or really learning any kind of dance as learning another language. And then you also mentioned when the one who did the butterfly and the instructor were talking, you said they were like talking in code. And you said that he said something that sounded almost like this isn't the exact words that you said, but this is what it reminded me of, like waking up a sleeper agent, like just some magical string of words. And then she just launched into this trick. And then now you're talking about button smashing on video games. which I think is really interesting way to think about stuff that when you practice enough at it does come second nature and it almost becomes difficult to explain. Of course, you're an instructor, so you have to think about explaining it, but thinking about button mashing or speaking English, this is a language that I know. I don't have to think about speaking it. If I learned another language and got to a really good point, some of it would also just come out so naturally. When did you kind of find a place where you felt like, oh, this language is coming very naturally to me now? Oh, someone is smashing the buttons and it's coming out with the right tricks.
Oh my gosh, I love your comparison of the sleeper agent. It was literally like that. Like the instructor just like whispers some words to this normal, and all of a sudden, just like bam, became like an acrobat. Like that's exactly my experience, which I'm sure maybe it's like not other people's experience, but I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it felt to me. When did it start feeling more natural? Oh my gosh. Really good question. I would say it's pretty hard to say because it just took me so long to get to that point. Um, but I would say maybe towards the end of my first year, it
Mm-hmm.
started to click a lot. But I mean, in that first year I was pole dancing, I like jumped in the deep end. So, I was taking maybe like 5 classes a week or something like
Oh, wow.
that for like months. And the only reason I feel like I even got to that point was because I took a freestyle class, like a freestyle pole dancing class. Freestyle is really, really big um, in pole dance. And I think why I was able to feel kind of comfortable was I just kind of got into a flow state because we were just dancing without any sort of like choreography for like an hour and a half. And so after
Mm-hmm.
some time, when you just keep on moving, you just kind of keep that energy moving, it just starts to kind of swirl and you access maybe just kind of like a different state of mind that helps you get there. And I think just doing pulls so much that you can get into like sort of like a flow state from it and really take out like the thinking part of it. That's when things started to click and started to feel more natural. And that's obviously, I think that looks differently for everyone, but I would say I'm sure there's like a pretty strong correlation with just like the amount of time, like the hours that you're putting into this craft.
I'm glad you brought up the choreography aspect and this flow state because what is coming in my head now, especially when you're talking about butterfly and all the skills that you learn that come with pole, is it almost seems it almost seems from an outsider's perspective and like listening in now, trick oriented or not trick, but yeah, I guess tricks in a way, skill oriented in the same way like competition dance is kind of these very specific moves that are almost looped together by smaller moves, but it's usually focused on like very specific big moves. So I'm wondering in pole dancing where and even though it's in the name dancing, where the dance aspect kind of comes in and how you do make choreography when you're thinking about, well, I also want to insert this. I hate to call them tricks, but they kind of look
They're
like
tricks.
tricks.
We call them
Yeah.
tricks.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
We call them tricks.
Cool. Because I guess what I'm thinking is like you have the tricks and then there are dance moves. How do you tie in the two together?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think that um is a big part of what makes pole so interesting is that it's not just tricks, it's not just the acrobatics, but there is a dance element to it. So because the pole is connected to the ground, right? You can dance around the base of the pole. So you can be dancing like with your feet on the ground, holding onto the pole. And we call that like typically low flow or base work. You can do just floor work where you're not even like touching the pole. And then there's also like aerial work, right? When you're like on the pole, but you're not touching the ground. So I would say those are the main kind of like regions of the pole. So it it really this question is might be different depending on who you ask because every single pole dancer is different. There's some pole dancers that are like, I don't do tricks. I am just
Mm.
a floor work, base work, like low flow girly. I'm all about the dance. I don't do tricks. And then there's some dancers who are like, I love the tricks. tricks are my thing. I like only do tricks. And then there's some people who do a little mix of both. So I think it really kind of like just depends on your style and what you like to emphasize and sort of when. Like for me, what I like about pole is that I I love I love just normal dance. You can apply any style of dance to pole. The pole is just like a tool. It's just like an apparatus for you to get more like range and do different things with it. So I would say it just kind of depends on how you want to express yourself, right? Like for me, when I'm doing certain tricks, like I feel like powerful. Sometimes I feel like I'm flying. I want to feel like I'm floating in the air, and I love that. But then sometimes I'm like, you know what? I kind of just want to just slither around the base of the pole and like feel really
Slither.
slinky. So I slither. I'm like slithering around. So I would say it just straight up depends on how you feel you want to express yourself, like in that moment and in that time. Whether you want to start dancing a little bit or like do like a little bit more of like the trick side of pole. And so there really is no kind of like such a gray area where it kind of keeps going kind of like back and forth between the two. Like I don't know if you've seen it before, but there is like this old video, I think, of Elvis like pole dancing. So he's like performing, he's
No,
doing
I've
dancing
never
like a
seen
group
that.
number, and then one moment there's like a pole, and then he after he's dancing for a big kind of like wow moment, like a finale, he like jumps on the pole and he like swings around, and it's like super
I've
cool. I
got to
gotta
look
send
that
this to
up.
you. I
It
have to
wasn't
send
in
this
the
to you.
Elvis movie.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I gotta send it to you. But anyway, so I think like we use the pole as like a tool. So when you sometimes you want to have like a big moment, like maybe it matches the music or something. That's when you want to go for like a big trick.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious how you approach choreography yourself. Just and it doesn't even have to come from a necessarily pole base. I mean, we are talking about pole dancing, but you've done other dance before. So when you're thinking about choreographing something for a pole performance, where does your head go? Do you start from this is what I want to express, let me choose music and go from there? Or maybe you hear a song and you're like, oh, I feel this listening to this song. I want to go from there. I want to know your process from 0 to 1.
Oh, this I love this question. It depends on the type of performance. So, for example, like if I'm asked to perform for a type of event that maybe has a theme to it, but I would say more often than not, it's the music that inspires me. Or maybe I'm assigned music, right? I'm asked to perform to a certain song or a certain
Mm-hmm.
idea. So I would say usually the song comes first, and then I'll just listen to the song. I'll listen to the song, I close my eyes and listen to it very carefully and kind of feel just how my body responds naturally. How do I feel when I'm listening to this part of the music? What sorts of imagery is it evoking right now? And I just kind of take note of that. And then maybe I'll listen to it again just like a few times. And then I'll sort of like take note of that. And so when I'm dancing, when I'm choreographing, I see it as me being the physical kind of like a manifestation of that sound, of that
That's
music.
beautiful.
And I'm like a channel for that. So I just try to portray that as like as accurately as possible. So I'll give an example. I was recently asked to perform to like a musical a score to a film, and this included like a string quartet, so like two violins, viola, and cello, and like a piano, which is not your typical like pole dancing music. So I listened to it and I'm just like, okay, this part feels sad. This part feels like kind of energetic. These are kind of like the swells here. And so I just kind of have good, like a kind of like a landscape and kind of like the mood of it. So then maybe at the parts where it gets bigger, it gets more dramatic, I want to think about doing something big and dramatic. And those will sort of be my main markers. If I know that there's three big moments in the song, so it's going to be three big moments in my choreography. And so I'll kind of plan those big moments and then I'll work backwards from there to kind of string everything together. And I would say that's more or less like typically how I do it.
And how do you remember? Do you write it down? Do you video yourself? Do you just remember?
It is, I would say it's muscle memory. So when
Mm-hmm.
I'm training and practicing for a piece, I will just run it over and over and over and over again until it is in my body and I know the music back and forth so that when it comes times to perform, my brain is off, my body's just going and I'm just feeling my feeling.
Hmm. And have you ever choreographed for other dancers?
I haven't choreographed like full pieces from like front to back, telling them everything to do because at that point I don't know if that's fun for me because I want it to be really their creative expression. But I've worked with a number of my students for their showcase performances, and that it's like so much fun for me because I just love hearing about their creative vision and like helping them embody that and like bringing that to life. Like that is so magical for me to like be a part of that process.
No, that makes total sense. And you're just watching them grow because I imagine you have some students that you have seen from the beginning. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen them come in. They're like they're fourth or their fifth class, and they're so new. And then just like they absolutely blossom, and it's just like I see how they have this inner radiance that comes out, and
Um,
it's just so beautiful to witness because I feel like everyone has a very unique style of movement and dance. It's like how everyone
mm,
has their own type of handwriting, right? We can all write the same thing on a piece of paper. We all read it the same way, but everyone writes it slightly different, and you know it's them because it's their handwriting. And I feel like it's very similar with dance. And so seeing my students really kind of like cultivate their unique individual style and their own language and refining that and fine-tuning that is it's so fulfilling because like they get so much out of it too.
and when did you know that you wanted to start teaching?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I was like, I want to start teaching. So what happened is, a new studio opened up by my apartment. I used to have to, so I live in Brooklyn. Used to have to commute all the way into Manhattan, to take
Woof.
class. Yeah, I know. And then on the weekend, if L train service is not working,
Mm-mm.
you're just
Hmm.
super screwed. So a new studio opened up, and it was only like a 20-minute bike ride away. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I'm just gonna live here now. And so, I was a student there, and then I actually became a work study there. So I would work the front desk, I would clean the toilets, I would mop the floors in exchange for taking classes there, essentially. And so I was just head over heels. And I was like, I'm going to take every single class. I am here all the time. I was always training. I was just so excited to be at a new studio and like learn from everyone. So I was just like really focused on learning and like getting as good as I could possibly get. And I think it got to a point where people started asking me, they're like, Connie, like, when are you going to start teaching? And I had some other instructors or mentors tell me like, Coleen, like I think you're like really wonderful and I really like to kind of just like help you like move forward. I think you'd just be like a wonderful instructor because like the studio always needs like more substitute instructors. Like I think you'd be wonderful. So I think it came kind of naturally me being there all the time and just like learning a lot and having the skills and then also maybe just like getting that recognition from my community as well, which I'm just like so grateful for that.
I love that it's from the encouragement of other people around you. Basically, it almost sounds like you almost didn't have a choice but to teach. That was just the natural progression of your learning and blossoming was then to spread that same thing that you'd received from others to other people. And I love to hear that.
Yeah, it's like such a beautiful butterfly effect, and like obviously I love I actually love teaching.
Mm,
I was like a TA for like drama class when I was like in high school.
cute.
And then yeah, it was so much fun. And then I also taught like philosophy to like high school middle schoolers actually when I was in college as part of like a volunteer program. And I also do like some mentoring as well with like big brothers, big sisters. So I've always just like love like teaching. And so I think it just kind of all like naturally came together that I could teach something that I was just very passionate about. And so I'm just like so grateful that I'm able to do that.
So that's just, it's a common thread in your life then teaching, which I feel as in a chief of staff position, like at your regular 9 to 5, that's not teaching per se, but you are holding a lot of people in your hands.
Yes, I would say you are reading the room and you are guiding people towards some sort of goal. So that's what the two jobs have in common.
It just sounds like everything in your life is right now just really synchronizing in synchronicity, and you seem to be following exactly what you're supposed to do. I am really curious as to if you have ever entertained the idea of, or if you ever see yourself doing pole and pole adjacent things full time.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about doing that. And I think one, first of all, just shout out to everyone who does full time, like because wow,
Shout out to
that
them.
is not a freaking job for the week. You're an athlete, right? You're like basically like a professional athlete. You're also like an entrepreneur as well. Like you're
Mm,
a business owner because you are your own business. You are operating everything. That is just one hell of a job. Um, I like to think of separating like art versus commerce, right? Like commerce is like the things that like make you money, right? And then there's just kind of art, which is like creativity for like creativity's sake. And so I do fear that if I were to make pull full time and make it all of like it'll just end up being like all commerce. It'll be
hmm
all business, and I won't have as much time or energy for myself to pour into like my creative practice. So while I've thought about it, I do think that having sort of a 9 to 5, especially one that is, a desk job that is sedentary, it supports my creativity and it allows me to do as much as I can with pole. And I honestly don't know if I have what it takes to do pole full time. It's extremely difficult. And I just have so much respect for all of the full-time dancers and like the business owners and like the pole studio owners out there.
I want to pull out that word you said about your desk job being sedentary and that being kind of, well, important to like just providing you, I guess, with the energy. It provides you with physical energy and also physical energy to pursue all the pole things that you do. Because if you were working in a warehouse or something constantly on your feet, I feel fairly confident that you would not have the energy to then do pole 5 to 7 days a week afterwards.
Absolutely, 100%. There's just absolutely no way. Pole is so demanding on your body, that I just feel like my body would start to break down. So it is a really nice balance. I work like a very sedentary job where I'm in a very masculine space, and then I also work with my body in a place that is like very feminine. So I feel like it does offer such a good, great balance in my life.
Do people at work know that you pole dance?
I do not, for the most part, no. I in the past um I've shared it before, but I think recently, I haven't been, and I've been really keeping the two parts of my life pretty separate because I mean, I love pole and I hate to be able to kind of like maybe like hide certain parts of my life, but at the same time, I think I have to be pretty mindful, about how people perceive me, especially if I'm working in
Of course.
finance with a bunch of men. If I tell them I pole dance, and I'm, a young Asian woman, they're going to kind of see me in a certain way that probably is not going to be very helpful, for my career and self-image, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate, but it is also a very real reality. I mean, we can get into what does a pole dancer look like, but I remember the first time I met you, Jamie, my best friend, had said, she said, "Oh, Colleen's a really crazy pole dancer. Like, you wouldn't guess it." And then obviously we got to talking, we exchanged Instagrams, and I was like, "Whoa, this is who she is. This is incredible." But it is totally different from the way that you present yourself, and we could get into um respectability politics and all that stuff. I'm not saying that the way you present yourself is totally different because that is who you are. You are expressing yourself and your creativity like it as a pole dancer in that. So, and I don't think that it betrays who you are at all. But there is a very real reality that pole dancing is very much associated with taking off your clothes and stripping and dancing, and that's not something that a lot of people want to tell a lot of other people about.
That's so funny. I just think it's so funny that I can't believe like Jamie is saying this about me or like people who are saying this about me, but at the same time, I can remember when I saw someone do a butterfly for the first time and like my brain exploded. So, wow, thank you. And yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. I mean, pole dancing is a huge part of what makes pole dancing so special, right? Like the community that I talk about being such like a safe space for people to explore like their femininity and their sensuality and like their erotic side is because it is an art form that comes from the club, that it comes from, it comes from strippers. It was an art form that's created by strippers and shared with the world. Um, and, largely there is just a lot of stigma around, sex work and sex workers and like strippers. And that's sort of like where it comes from.
Do you find that now being in that space, your I guess your views, your thinking, your what you care about has changed in terms of what you think about sex work, what you define as sex work? Because I'm sure you're surrounded by people who probably are also dancing and also teaching in different environments.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I am just a lot more aware of social issues because, especially like sex workers issues, because I mean, pole dancers, sex workers a lot of people think that they're like two different groups. Like there's a type that only do like pole fitness, and then
Hmm.
there's like the strippers, and they're like two different people, but we're like really all kind of the same. We're kind of all enmeshed together. Um, so yeah, I think it's sex work is just so much more nuanced than I realized. And also the way that women are treated also. I feel like I've spent a lot more time being aware of that and how the law really is there not to protect people, but to serve the interests of those in power and to keep them in power. And a lot of the stigma, I think it also just comes down to control.
Control. Why do you use that word?
Control, I would say control over like women and like women's bodies. I mean, like sex workers were primarily women, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of women of color, which are unfortunately, definitely more marginalized groups.
It's so interesting about the that you bring up the word control and the control over women's bodies when I mean you do see in the club that women are making the money for themselves, right? But who is owning most of those clubs? It's typically men. I'm sure there are some clubs out there where women have bulldozed and are going ahead and doing that, but a lot of these clubs are owned by men. The clientele are men. I guess
Yeah, it's made by men for men.
do you do you see club dancers in your classes or in any other classes? And do you know, I guess, girls in your classes or women rather, who have thought, oh, maybe I could go to the club and do this too?
Oh, yeah, so that's pretty common. I would say yes, absolutely. Students, instructors, and the thing is, like, not everyone is out about it. Not everyone is open about their work. So sometimes, like, there are some students or some instructors that make that part of their lives like very clear, but there's some that are like, you know what, that's just my job and that's
Hmm.
it. I don't feel like I need to really like tell everyone this and like identify with it, especially because it might be a risk to me for people to know that. And I think the difference between working at a club and stripping is that that is a job, right? That is a
Hmm.
service that you're providing. And pole dancing often that is it's for recreation, right? So I think a lot of maybe people who are haven't done sex work or like stripping before, they kind of like me, and take a pole class and they get so addicted. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun, I love it, like I want to do this all the time, and like wow, if I could do this and get paid for it, like that would be awesome. I want to perform. So usually it's because students they're drawn to performing, they love performing, they're like, oh, I'm in a club. But the reality of it is that you are not getting paid to pole dance when you're going to the club. That is, people don't really care for that.
Yeah.
They're there for they're there for like lap dances and
It's like
other like
two different dialects if we're going to keep talking about or in the form of languages. I feel like pole dancing and dancing in the club, they are similar, but two different dialects. You are working different muscles in terms of you you now need something from your audience, which is money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's completely different. And I would say sometimes like I know a lot of dancers like they don't pole dance at all, and sometimes they're the ones that make the most money because the money is not on the stage, at
Mm,
least in New York. So I've definitely seen a number of like my peers go become just like, pole dance hobbyists to working full time in the club. And it's a really big wake up call for them because they think it's like, oh, it's all like about empowerment and just like feeling sexy and like owning my sexuality. And then like I pay for it. But the hard reality is that, the way that the clubs are governed, the rules are, they are set up so that you are at a huge power disadvantage. And, there are it's a lot harder to like you have to negotiate your physical boundaries all the time.
I wonder if there's an unspoken rule of sorts of when you see someone from your classes in the wild, like and you're with someone else, is it like a, oh my goodness, I know this girl from pole, or because maybe not everyone wants people to know that, kind of like when you see your therapist out on the street and it's like, oh, do we acknowledge how we know each other, or what's the vibe here?
Yeah, I would say that's such an interesting question, and I've definitely kind of gone through that period. So I think all pole dancers, the ones that really kind of stick in it for the long run, we all go through this period. At least most of us, we go through this period where it's this thing that we do just for us to feel ourselves, and we love it so much, and we do it all the time. But we understand how society views pole dancing, and so we keep it a secret for most people, and we don't know
Hmm.
when, at what point, like, oh, should I tell people? Should I not tell people? Like, when is a good time? And so we all go through this period of like, yes, I pole dance, but like, I'm not a pole dancer. I just take pole dancing classes. Like, when do I tell people? When am I out about it? What happens if I start posting on my social media? Like, people are going to think of me like a certain way. And I think everybody handles it a little bit differently, right? I think that it's not weird to be like, oh, I know that girl from pole dancing class. I think now, like in 2024, right? It's super like pole dancing as a fitness class is
Hmm.
super duper common, right? We got like J-Lo pole dancing, we got SZA pole dancing, we got
FKA
like
Twigs.
Twigs, exactly. Twigs, like the icon pole dancing. So now it's seen as this like very cool and like trendy thing. So it's totally fine to tell people you're pole dancing, but it's a whole other story to like post on like your main Instagram account of like your pole dancing flow. So what a lot of people do
Hmm.
is they'll create like a private like um Instagram account just for pole dancing and post all of like their pole spam there because they're just like, I don't want to just like spam my entire friends and family with like all of my pole dancing videos. And on top of that, pole dancers are we're all like shadow banned on Instagram anyway because the algorithm
Mm.
flags us as sex workers. So sometimes it's like better off that we have like a separate account and we're like private so that yeah, we don't trip the algorithm.
Do your parents know?
They do know. I didn't tell them that I started pole dancing, I think, until I started performing. So I guess I kind of waited till a point where I was like, oh, I'm like good at this
Hmm.
to tell them. And, since they know that I've been, dancing and performing kind of throughout my life, I just sort of framed it as that. I didn't show
Hmm.
them like the videos and the photos. I just said like, I do this thing and it's nice. It's just like another form of dance and fitness. And so I think they took it pretty well. And it turns out a lot of their peers, their daughters also pole dance as well and
No
take pole
way.
dancing fitness classes. So my mom, she's like, well, my daughter, she's an instructor. So now
She's
she's like,
actually the best.
yeah, she's like, I'm proud of her. So yeah, it's pretty wholesome. They're just like,
That's amazing.
yeah, so they're pretty supportive of it. But I definitely, waited a while and kept it a secret from my family for some time.
I I don't know how I would approach that. I probably would have done the same thing as you. Wait until, okay, I'm actually really, 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 really good. So it's okay, mom and dad.
Yeah, I'll be like, look, I have something to show for, which kind of like, it really, um, it like that's just the reality, and it's I think everybody's journey is like a little bit different, right? Like you don't need to tell anyone if you don't want to. You can tell everyone if you want to. You just have to be
Yeah.
aware of like how that might affect that people see you. Like for example, I've definitely had some people I know who used to be my friends who were very I guess like triggered by me pole dancing.
Really?
So yeah, I think it's hard. You know, I think a lot of women like we're really repressed and we're not allowed to enjoy our own bodies and find pleasure in our own bodies and find ourselves beautiful and move in a way that's sensual for us. And so I think sometimes like when we see other people doing that, we think like, oh, how come she's allowed to do that, but like I can't. Like that's kind of like the mental block. And I've had this conversation with like many different friends. And so yeah, I think that is it brings up a lot of feelings in people.
Yeah.
And I've had friends tell me like when I see you doing like the acrobatic stuff, I think that's so cool. But then like when I see you move sensually, it like makes me uncomfortable and it makes me scared for you. So, you know,
Oh,
when you're doing something very sensitive, it just people will just kind of project their feelings on you.
I do think that there is an envy that comes from people who aren't free, seeing people who are free, people who are totally themselves. I think that that is very common. And for you to say how many women are repressed, and so seeing another woman like embrace her sexuality can feel very, oh, how can they do it and I can't do it? I think back to when I was in college. I was just a child. I was like 18, 19, and I didn't date in high school or anything, and I was just kind of like coming into really what I always was, just like crazy creative, like did whatever I want. Like I really didn't think about boys because like, the boys weren't thinking about me. So I thought, okay, whatever, we can both just not think about each other. And then in college, people are calling me like, it cringe to even say it now, like sexy. And at that time, I was like, that is the most disgusting word anybody could ever use to say about me, because I was like, what even is sexy? Like absolutely not. I was like, I'm just accepting that I am pretty. Like, come on, give me some baby room here. But then, of course, as like that was just me being super insecure and just not aware of these things, and it made me really stressed out. And now, as a 30, yeah, still 30, a 30-year-old woman, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm super sexy. Like, what? But I still think that was fine that at 18, I did not want to be called sexy. I cringe because I think, like, that's fine that she wasn't sexy at 18. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, at 18, you're still kind of a child. You're like a
Just a
teenager. So I
baby.
think, yeah, you're just
To
a
be fair, it was
child.
other teenagers calling me that to clarify. Well, some
Okay,
old people
I
too,
guess you're
but
right. That does change it. I definitely called other people sexy at like 14. So,
it was definitely some creepy guys, but it was most majority I'm thinking of college. But at the time I was like, I'm not ready to accept that word or that image of myself.
I get it. Yeah, I mean, that is such a journey. Like going from like being a girl to like a woman and kind of like really embracing that like this sensual and sexual part of ourselves. Like that it literally is it's a part of like womanhood, right? Like
Hmm.
it's kind of like an extension of puberty.
Yeah, it's it is quite a journey. I mean, Britney Spears wrote a song about it, right? Not a girl, not yet a woman.
That's like literally that's exactly what was going through my mind when I said that.
I see you. I see you. I do want to get into a bit more of like the mechanics of everything. You work a 9 to 5 job. Chief of staff title is no joke. It's a real title. And you pole dance, you learn, you also instruct. Sometimes you go to showcases and workshops in other cities, other states. You have a boyfriend that you live with. How do you do it all?
That is a great question. So I would say the thing is I parts of my life ebb and flow. When I was still building up, I mean, I'm still building up my career, but I would say like in earlier parts of my career, like I wasn't making a lot of money. So I didn't
Hmm.
have the money to take all the pole classes. I could just kind of pay for what I could. And I was like, you know, grinding my first years at work, just doing as much as I possibly could. So I wasn't really dancing as much then. And then there was a period in my life where I was working at like a tech startup, like seriously. So we were working, I mean, it was like a 24/7 mentality job. And at that point, um, I I'm wondering even how I balanced it all, but I just danced as much as I could for that time being, right? I just did as much as I could. Maybe it wasn't as much as I would like, but it was always just kind of consistent in my life. So work is a little bit busier, I dance less. And then when work is less busy, I'll kind of dance more. So it continues to kind of like ebb and flow throughout my life, but it's always consistently there. And I think I'm able to do so much now is because I've just kind of like built that foundation and kind of also like that network. And also
Mhm.
like the rhythm in my life too. Like I think that everything kind of comes in cycles, and because the two jobs are like very vastly different, I can really use the work and the energy from one to kind of like feel the other, if that makes sense.
That does make a lot of
So
sense.
yes, so I do work 9 to 5, and then I teach a class Monday nights, so that's after work, and then I also teach on Tuesday nights, so that's after work, and so I guess I work a 9 to 5, and then a 5 to 9.
Yeah,
So it's like
that's
I
a
work during
full
the day and
day,
then I just
girl.
dance all night. And then I used to spend literally my entire weekends dancing. And I know that was like pretty hard, like on my boyfriend, because he was like, "Where's Coleen?" And I'm just like out the
Oh,
next. That was the only time I had, but I think he was like he's been pretty understanding of it. So, um, yeah, I guess that's kind of how I do it. It's like literally my free time. I'm making this happen. In the beginning, it was kind of hard because it's like it's just hard to get yourself to do so much, right? To dance so
of
much. But then
course.
when you start to build it up over time, you feel weird when you're not moving or dancing that much.
No, that makes total sense. I think for a lot of people, you talk about the ebb and flow, I think for a lot of people, when they are on the lower end of doing the thing that they feel they love so much that gives them the passion, they can sometimes feel really guilty. How do you manage that guilt? Like, how do you kind of just say, oh, well, I can't get to this right now and I have to be okay with that? Or do you? Maybe you don't. Maybe you do still feel guilty.
Like not do you mean feel guilty for not having enough time to devote to some sort of like creative practice?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I think the thing is, like, life is always changing, right? There's going to be times in life where life is lifing and you just got to get through whatever is going on at that
Mm-hmm.
moment. And that's what it is. And yeah, I guess I do feel guilty at times, but, I realize that I will have time in the future. There will be times in my life in the future that things are not as busy and hectic, and I will be able to devote more time to this. And the time will come and it will happen. But yeah, we can't always do everything all at once. We just kind of have to handle like what's in front of us.
Yeah, the pendulum is always swinging. I always like to think of it that way. I guess too, I'll wind things down, wrap things up. What would you say has been the peak and the valley of your pole career?
Wow. That's a really great question. So I would say I feel like I'm thinking now, so hopefully it doesn't go back down. Hopefully it keeps going up. But I would say
Of
that was
course.
such a great time. Like I'm so lucky. Like I'm teaching like, I've been teaching like 45 classes a week. I love them. I've been able to see my students grow. And then I had a performance last weekend that was my first duet. So it was me and another dancer. So both of us on separate poles and the same pole. We choreographed and performed the entire thing in
Sounds
4
crazy.
days. It was wild. We had a huge audience and like we were so connected to the audience and like they really felt it and they were really moved by it. So I mean, that was just like so magical, that I was able to kind of like have that experience. And I have so much more planned, I have so much more like lined up too.
Of
Like
course.
there's so many things that I have going on. I'm so fueled by like this energy and I just kind of want to keep the momentum going. And the greatest part, I think, of my journey right now is like being able to connect with other artists like you, haha, artists like us, like artists like you,
Artists like
um,
us.
artists like us, to combine our creative energies together and create something bigger than the both of us. Like I think that's a huge part of like what's getting me ramped up right now.
Hmm.
It's just so cool. This entire year I've had like so many collaborations with different artists, like also dancers or maybe like photographers and like fashion designers. And it's just opened up like I feel like this like endless, limitless like channel of like energy.
I hear
So I would
that.
say, yeah, I'm definitely like riding a high right now. And in terms of a low, um, there was a time in the beginning of my pole journey that I pretty much quit.
You quit.
Yeah, I like kind of quit. So I took
But
like,
you're
I don't
here
know,
now,
maybe
so let's
like,
hear the
and
story.
I'm here, so it's fine. So I kind of quit because I took like a number of classes and I remember I took a class and it was so hard. It was so freaking hard. The instructor, I took the class, instructor came in. I was by far the least experienced girl in the class. Everyone had been dancing for like years, basically, and I had only been dancing for like, I don't know, like a month and a half or something at that point. And she was just making us do like the hardest, like most acrobatic things. And I could do like the first two out of like 20 things that we did. I was
Mm.
so wiped out. I was so tired. I was so beat up and like I was so discouraged. I was like, actually, no, like I'm not cut out for this. Like I'm not an athlete. Like this is not for me. I'm spending so much money. This was so expensive and like I'm not cut out for this. So I actually stopped taking classes for a while and was just like, oh, that was fun. Glad I tried it out. But I actually made a friend and she was like, let's both get on ClassPass and like just like try like a bunch of like
Class
fitness
pass, of
classes.
course.
I know. I love and hate ClassPass. I really do. Such a love hate. And she was like, oh, let's take a pole class. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. And then I took the pole class again and I was like, wait, this is super fun. And then I had an amazing time and then it was
Oh,
incredible. And then I kind of got back into it. And I think it was just like that one class experience that I had with like maybe that one instructor that really discouraged me. And
mm,
then it was just like another instructor that brought everything back. And I think, that just really goes to show that it really, the way that you learn something is just, in your experience is so dependent on the context and also the instructor that you have. So, anyway, I always hope that like I can be that instructor for my students. It's like
I'm sure
it's their
you
first time
are.
like taking my class and they have like a wonderful experience. They want to come back because I know what it's like to be so sad and defeated to just give up. And I just hope that no one ever has to like go through what I went through.
Yeah, I was just thinking while you're telling that story, I'm sure that has made you the pole instructor that you are. Just thinking about that, what made you get off the horse and what made you get back on the horse is so. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Colleen, thank you so much for just sharing this entire story with me and with all the artists like us that may be listening.
With my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This is the first time I'm doing a podcast, so not gonna lie, I'm pretty nervous, but this was like so much fun like chatting with you.
No, you are have done totally great. I mean, this is my first podcast, not my first episode, but this is my first time entering a podcast sphere of universe. So I'm also nervous.
I am just so excited to see how this podcast is going to grow because I just have a feeling you have so many people in your network with such like different perspectives. So like when everything's on, I'm gonna like make sure I subscribe and listen to like the latest episodes, just like put you on blast. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
it's been really nice to talk to people, especially people we've talked about this before that you don't really get to connect with as often, and people that like old friends I don't really get to talk to as often, and just like friends of friends. It's really almost like a really selfish excuse to just talk to people and dig into their creative brains. And if people
It's
listen,
you
that's a
say
plus.
it's selfish. You say it's selfish, but I feel like that's so it's so selfless, right? You're really just like connecting and like giving back to the community in so many different ways.
I'm happy you see it that way because I feel that way too. But thank you so much, Colleen. And I hope everyone has had a great. Oh, maybe I should take a pole class. Now I'm feeling a little bit inspired to do that.
You should
Um,
take a pole class. I
where are you
teach
teaching?
Tuesday nights at Nimble in Bushwick. Class starts at 7 o'clock. You should totally come. Level one will be appropriate for you.
Okay.
Usually people take intro first, but they can definitely take like level one classes with me. So if you ever decide just on a whim you want to stop by, I'll be there Tuesday night, 7 o'clock.
Right. Amazing. And listeners, listen in. Hear that. Thank you so much, Colleen, and I will see you soon.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for sitting down with artists like us. I'm Janita Richards, and I want you to be inspired by the life that's lived by you, because of you, and all around you. Are you our next guest? Submit yourself or a friend at cabbagehouse.xyz/artists like us. If you're feeling up to it, leave the show a review and share it with your friends. It means a lot. Stay sweet, sexy, silly, and inspired. I'll see you here next time with another guest just as interesting as the last. Hey, you might even know them. Ciao for now.